Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 Yorkton, and our first topic once again this week is spring seeding. And Kevin, I know you're still seeding in that southwest part of Saskatchewan. How's it going for you?
Just about to the end, working on some green feed barley for some cattle farming neighbors that we cooperate with. So might not quite get done today, but down to the last strokes. And yeah, a lot of progress here. You still can see and run by fields that haven't been seeded, but a lot of people are on the last stages, and some people are finishing up in this part of the world.
Ryan, I know you have some family up in the Kelvington, Margot area. How's spring seeding going for them?
Well, believe it or not, I haven't actually talked to them recently about seeding progress, but I could imagine they're starting to make some progress now, considering that we've had some very hot weather here over the last week, which I know for a lot of farmers up in the northeastern part of the province and where home is for me, that's very welcome, considering all the excessive moisture conditions and just simply being too wet to get out into the field yet, unless you wanted to roll the dice and get stuck with the tractor. But nonetheless, that's good news here. But around here in the Regina area, lots of activity here when it comes to seeding. Generally speaking, on some of the travels I've made this week, producers have said they're about a week later than normal when it comes to the start of seeding. But nonetheless, I'm expecting a lot of progress to be made. And for this upcoming provincial crop report, I wouldn't be surprised if we jumped up from where we were at the halfway point to three-quarters done. So that's kind of my expectation for the crop report this week. Also, another thing, too, when it came to the crop report, I noticed that there's crop damage reported already with some of the early seeded crops, but generally minor in nature. So that's good news in a way. So, yeah, this is something that kind of popped out into my mind. Doug, over in the Yorkton area, what's it like?
Yeah, they're getting going here now as well for a good week now. We took out GX94 supper in the field actually to western Manitoba, just south of Russell in the Binscarth area on Wednesday night, and they had probably about 1,000 acres in, I believe, but they still had another 2,000 acres to seed, so they were figuring it'd be a little while yet before they were done. But they did have some issues. They were getting stuck here and there, having neighbors pull them out. So yeah, it's still some damp spots here and there. The Manitoba crop report from this week said that 55% of the crop was in the ground in Manitoba, 52% was in the ground here in Saskatchewan. Kevin, are you surprised at all by those numbers?
I was trying to guess where the numbers would come out in Saskatchewan, and I was debating whether it would be just under or just over the halfway point, and the numbers came in at just over the halfway point. So that's great progress, but it is still well behind the 5 and 10 year averages. But given the week we've had since the crop report was released on Thursday, but it's for conditions up until last Tuesday, by the time next Tuesday rolls around, as Ryan indicated, there should be a big jump in seeding completion. I doubt, though, that we'll really catch up to where we would be on average. So people going hard, and it's that east central and northeast region that really are under the gun and wanting to get the crop in the ground as soon as possible.
Also, this week, Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Saskatchewan Agriculture Minister David Merritt on a couple of topics. One was, of course, his spring flooding tour, and the other was his meeting last week with Federal Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald. How did that go?
It went pretty good. It's actually been quite a while since I spoke with the ag minister, so I felt, kind of an interview was due. So we'll kind of cover the flooding visit first. So he was up on three different occasions this month, touring areas that were flooded. Quite a big list of areas, actually. I was provided right around the Wadena, Kelvington, Melfort, Tisdale, Nipawin areas, and Buchanan and around Kenora as well, among other places. He said that there was a lot of devastation, as he put it, a lot of areas that were heavily affected by all the flooding conditions. but he still expressed optimism about the producers being able to, catch up on seeding and make the most out of it, get a crop in the ground. How they quickly bounce back, though, just kind of depends on, how quickly things dry up. And, with this hot weather, as we mentioned before, that should definitely help things out. In conversations that he's had with some producers, they indicated that they would leave, like, say, out of a quarter of land, maybe a third of the acres left unseeded because of all the flooding. So just a little bit of a snapshot on what they're dealing with there. And obviously, several RMs are applying for PDAP funding or Provincial Disaster Assistance Program funding to kind of help out with all the flooding and damage that's been caused by said conditions. Now, over to the meeting with the Federal Agriculture Minister, Heath MacDonald. The general theme of that was just organizing the agenda for the upcoming FPT Ag Ministers meeting that's coming up this summer in Halifax, Nova Scotia in mid-July. Merritt said that he wanted to get a couple of things on the agenda to talk about. One was the CFIA's proposed traceability regulation changes, as well as, I believe, if my memory serves me well, the ag research sites of Indian Head and Scott, and just some conversation around what can be done with the research sites. He didn't tip his hand as to what was said in the conversation. He said, though, that he felt better about the topics. So we'll kind of see where that goes in the meetings, whether there's anything concrete that comes out of that or not. We know that the Commons Ag Committee, they put out a report on the closures and basically recommended that the sites remain open. But we don't know for certain whether the feds are going to adhere to those regular recommendations. So that's kind of a wait and see kind of approach. But that's kind of the gist of the meeting with the federal ag minister and what he's been up to recently.
Kevin, your thoughts on those comments?
Yeah, it's great to see the minister touring the flooded areas, and I think he's right. With there's going to be unseeded acreage, and there is unseeded acreage coverage under crop insurance that producers can choose to have. I don't think it's going to be the level of unseeded acreage that we saw, say, back in, I believe it was about 2016, when there was literally millions of acres of Saskatchewan farmland that went unseeded, whole farms that never were able to get an acre into the ground. But I think that the situation will be better, but I think there will also be some areas that were just too darn wet and covered with water and flooded, or just too muddy by seeding deadline time, that there will be some unseeded acreage claims. But I don't think at this point it's going to be the huge issue that we might have imagined a couple of weeks ago.
And as well, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan put out a news release this week about crop insurance deadlines and how SCIC and the Ministry of Agriculture are handling that. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with APAS President Bill Probilski on that.
That's right. Basically, APAS is just trying to help getting the word out and remind producers of some upcoming deadlines. Now, we know that the absolute final deadline for crop insurance coverage for seeded acres is June 20th, but there's also the basically the kind of the recommended seeding deadlines, and that's kind of dependent on where you are and what type of crops that you're planting. So if you're somewhere where I'm at home in the East Central region, for example, for canola, I believe the deadline was around June 1st or something like that. I could be wrong, but there is an interactive map tool that producers can use to kind of figure out the recommended seeding deadlines for insurance. Very handy tool, by the way. But just something that, again, APAS is trying to get the word out on. Bill said that Saskatchewan Crop Insurance did send out an email as a reminder. And while, that's appreciated, farmers are obviously busy trying to get seed in the ground and probably not checking their emails as closely as they maybe should. But some suggestions, obviously, getting on social media, getting on some other platforms that producers use to try to get the word out and reminder that these deadlines are coming up, and make sure you get your insurance all covered, all the bases covered. So that's kind of basically what they're up to.
Kevin, what's your reaction to the APAS news release and when it comes to crop insurance deadlines?
Yeah, I think it's a situation where it's still a little murky. There are recommended seeding dates and deadline dates, and depending upon if you end up with a crop insurance claim, was it because you seeded late, or was there another cause of loss? So if you seeded late, but there was another cause of loss, such as insects or hail damage or something like that, then they'd probably ignore the seeding date. But to me, it's all a little bit murky. And one of the seeding dates has passed completely by, and that is the seeding deadline for seeding chickpeas, which need a long growing season. That seeding deadline was May 21st. According to the Sask Ministry of Agriculture crop report that came out this week, only 55% of the province's chickpeas had been seeded, and that was as of last Tuesday, way after the May 21st deadline. Now, a couple of things. Some people say that the crop reporters don't do a good job of understanding what's happening with chickpeas versus regular field peas. So that it's possible that that estimate is wrong. But if the estimate is anywhere near right, there's a whole lot of chickpeas to be seeded after the deadline, which could end up voiding their crop insurance coverage.
All right. Well, on that note, that'll conclude this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, and 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director, Doug Falconer, saying so long until next time.